Hi folks and welcome back as we look at yet more plots here on Shadow Kingdom Build Discovery, and we've got a few more interesting plots to look at where we're going to start finding things for you guys to try out for yourselves, get some inspiration and see some of the do's and don'ts of creative building. Guys, we've hit 80 subscribers. I am really hoping that in the next few weeks we can hit the 100 mark, so please consider giving us a subscribe if you're enjoying this content. But without further ado, let's get into the plots. So folks, here we are, we're starting at build 56 on this episode, the BuildCon booth built by Abuilder and Ultrabrain and JST, I believe, who are three of the veterans of the server, as many of you will know if you've been watching any of the previous vids. And this really is, it's sort of a redux of the spawn here in Creative Build Discovery, the signature style here with these amazing dragons. Let's just stop for a minute and stare in awe and wonder at these organics. They are phenomenal and a bit of a trademark of the spawn builds that we've had on the various servers here at Shadow Kingdom. They are such fantastic builds. I can't even begin to comment on what's good and what's bad and how to not build like this, because frankly this is way beyond me. So let's just appreciate them. Let's have a little look at some of the rest of the plot. Some very typical JST style water here. I'm not quite sure what are these. The little weird lava effect flashes. I'm not sure why they're there, so we're just going to ignore them for now. But look at these crashing waves. This is the idea of giving the water a sense of motion and life by these great splashing, crashing waves on these very steep cliffs. Again, we've said this before, but that is the way you build a bridge. Clear support. If you understand structure, you will see that that is a much more realistically built bridge with these arched supports underneath that hold up all of this stonework. Very nice marriage of good sound knowledge of structure with good solid Minecraft building. Let's have a little look here at the main keep itself, and yeah, it is really worth, guys, if you're starting to feel a bit stagnant in your building, trying to do this. Building on an angle is much harder, it takes a lot of time to learn, but it will elevate your plots to the next level if you can really master it. And there are plenty of builds to copy of, to get the style from, to figure out the main techniques from. Just get onto the server, look for builds that you like, and start to try and emulate them. It really is one of the best ways to learn how to build. Obviously this plot was built for something very specific, BuildCon event obviously. So we're not going to spend too long on here other than to say, Abuilder, Ultrabrain, JST, you're amazing, keep it up guys. So here you can see another really solid real world build here. This is build 57, German house by Brainpox, and there's a lot of good stuff going on here. It's a much less elaborate plot than many. It's a small plot as you can see, but there is some really good technique going on throughout this that I want us to have a look at and learn from, because this is a good confident builder here. And the first thing that I want to bring up is that this is a builder who has a really clear understanding of how things work, the function of each building. So let's take this windmill as an example. There are many people who build windmills on Minecraft, and most people have had a good go at putting those sails on, but what a lot of people don't think about is the inside of the windmill and making it look realistic, and the detail is what makes this a little bit special. Here you can see this prop shaft that runs all the way through the building really realistically, just the way a proper grain mill would have functioned. So you've got the big milling wheels here and the hay bales here to signify that this is where the grinding of the corn would have happened, and you can see all the way up, and let's go right to the top, that this would have been this prop shaft that would have been turned, we can't quite see out unfortunately, by the windmill propellers, which you can just see there. They would have turned that, which would have turned this, which would have turned the millstones here. So because Brainpox understands how the building functions, he can make it look much more realistic. He knows what detail to put inside that windmill to make it feel really authentic, and that stretches across all of the building work on this plot. This wonderful house design really shows something similar, that he thinks about how a real house would function. There's not much furniture in here, but structurally there are some interesting points that I want to kind of point out, and one of them is this, the fireplace and the chimney stack. It seems like such an innocuous thing, but Brainpox clearly understands that in these kind of older houses with fireplaces, you would have these massive fireplaces, and the chimney stack, if we come outside and look up, comes right through the whole way of the house at the specific point where it starts on the ground floor all the way up. The chimney stack comes all the way out, and importantly all the way higher than the top point of the roof. Now most people will make little chimneys that maybe stop down here, but this is the way it should be, because the whole point of a chimney stack is to get the heat and the smoke away from the highly flammable roof beams, and the way to do that is the stonework lets it above the A-frame of the roof, so that these houses didn't burn down. Brainpox knows this and has built the building accordingly, and this is what I was talking about in the previous episode of researching your builds. Really look carefully at how they were built, why they were built, and look, this chimney stack comes all the way up in the same place, so that the first floor, second floor fireplaces are all in the same place, all feeding up the same flue. Really adds some realism to the build, and really ups the realism, which I think helps give it some life. So really good build from Brainpox there. I'm sure we've scratched the surface of that one. Really charming, really unique style. So yeah, great job Brainpox. Really enjoyed that. Oh, and a couple of other things before we leave this plot. I forgot to mention an understanding of trees here as well from Brainpox. The willow tree by the water. Another way that you can make your buildings, your plots more realistic, is understanding nature and trees and plants and how they grow and where they grow. And it's a little detail, but it's really good to have your trees in the right places to make things that little bit more detailed and realistic. The last thing is the roof. Now, this is what I think makes this building a bit more interesting than just a single A-framed roof. It's got all these nestling A-frames, and all of them are at different heights, if you notice. So we've got this height. If we move around here, we're a few blocks up, maybe 4 blocks higher on this one, and then you've got the dormers up here, and the dormers slightly lower over here, and then you've got this one up here and this one up here. So there's like 5 different layers of that roof, which gives it an interesting profile. As you look at the house, it's not just up, across, down, and it makes it more visually interesting. A really simple tactic that you can use when building these larger builds to make them more visually interesting. Now here we are, build 58, entitled Farmlands by Old Seed, and this one took me a little bit surprised because I didn't read these signs too carefully before I started investigating the plot. So when I came down here and looked, I thought, yeah, solid plot, some nice details, nice farmland, nice little buildings, the fairly typical logs, slightly unique style with these raised watering canals. I looked around and thought, yeah, lovely pretty little plot, but didn't find anything that really made me go, ooh, that's different, that's unique. And then I realised that I had almost missed something quite interesting, which is if you come in this barn, lovely barn, and look down, there are hidden secrets. Here we have, ooh, hey, look at this. A whole extra layer of the build, which I nearly completely missed and would have felt quite stupid about if someone had told me after the episode, so I'm glad I found it. Some interesting, like a hidden silo for some kind of, I don't know, for a rocket or something almost could go out of that. It's obviously meant to be very technological, compared with the very domestic landscape above. Trying to mix some different styles in this plot, and it's really nice. I like it. Again, the end rods are a really good choice for the lighting here. Makes it look a bit more modern, futuristic. Avoids the torches, which would have kind of spoilt the illusion of modernness in here. So as you can see, if we go back out now, let me see if I can find the way out, which is a little bit tricky without a ladder, but let's go up and back into the barn and back out the door. And this is why we have this, which again is a lovely effect, that deep pool. But obviously this is where there must be the hatch that disappears and lets something out into the sky if needed. Again, I completely missed this, but subtle hint, this little chimney poking up out of the landscape. I love this idea of little hidden surprises in plots, and Old Sea, that was a really well done one. What I would say is try and make it just a tiny bit more obvious, because as I said, I could have almost completely missed that upon seeing this plot. And I would have really underestimated your build skills. So try and make those secrets secret enough, but not too secret. So it's that time in the episode where we have our usual Queenbethic build, who has featured so far in every single episode of this series, and I almost left this one out for a couple of reasons, which I will try and explain now. But let's have a little look at it first. It's a good, solid build. Some nice details. This little gatehouse here, the reinforced walls here to make this platform up here. Lovely little cottage, and some farmland. Some lovely, nice, tall custom trees that we've come to expect from Queenbethic. So why did I say I was going to leave it out? Well, to begin with, I was struggling to find things that I could say about this plot. Certainly not quite as visually impressive as other of Queenbethic's builds. I hope they don't mind me saying this. But there are some things that we can take from this. The main thing is, what I feel like this build lacks, actually, is a sense of focus. What is the focus of the plot? I mean, you could say this sort of gatehouse structure, but again, what's the point of it? It's not attached to any walls, so there's no gatehouse function to keep someone in or out. It's an enormous structure to go next to this quaint little cottage here, and from a storytelling point of view, it's difficult to understand what's going on in this plot. The elements seem to be slightly mismatched. Now, I'm not a mind reader. I've not had a conversation specifically with Queenbethic about this plot, but I do know that they are at the point where they are one of the highest ranked builders on the server at the moment, and that is simply because Queenbethic's been putting out so many plots. And what I think is starting to happen, And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Queenbethic has started to try to chase the ranks rather than for the love of building, but a little bit more because they want to put builds out to hit those higher ranks. And honestly, it feels a little bit like You Can Tell, because this feels like a build put up to get another build up. It's perfectly solid, really good build skills, but it doesn't bring anything particularly new to the table, unlike Queenbethic's other heavily themed, really detailed builds. This feels just a little bit lackluster, maybe. And that's certainly not knocking Queenbethic's build skills, because as we have seen every episode, Queenbethic makes amazing builds. But this is a warning for you guys playing on creative servers. Don't build just for the sake of building. Build things that are special and make people really ooh and ah if you can. Don't just chase the rank. Now here we are at build 60, Crested Pines by Redstoen. And again, this was another plot that I almost considered not showing. But I have got a couple of comments that I think may be useful to you guys who are building or trying to learn to be better builders, especially on these creative servers like this. And this is a good one. So the players can choose the exact spawn point, obviously, for visitors to arrive at, and this is the spot that Redstoen has chosen. And I don't think it's by accident. First of all, they obviously wanted to see their signs to communicate certain things before you started looking at the build. But second of all, it does something quite useful. It forces the player to be down at floor level. So when they come out, everything towers above them. It forces the perspective of the viewer. Now that's quite difficult on these creative plots, because the instinct is to just fly around manically in the way that probably I do when we're reviewing these plots, and the way I'm going to start doing now. But by Redstoen forcing you to start down here with a roof over me so I can't fly up, it means I come out and I get a very specific view with the towers in the background and the cliffs behind it, and that flag prominently shown. So if you want to capture things from a specific angle, let people see things from a certain vista, then that's a really good way of doing it. Now, as for the rest of the build, honestly, it's perfectly fine, but there's not a lot to say, I think, that I haven't already said on other plots. We could have done maybe with some custom trees, could have really raised this up a little bit. We've just got vanilla Mojang for the most part. The buildings aren't particularly impressive in style or structure, although they're perfectly sound. But there is one other thing that I think we can learn from, and unfortunately for Redstoen, and I hope they don't take this too personally, but I think it's a point of detailing. You see how we've got these mixed blocks to make these cliffs. The choice of blocks, combined with the fact that they're so heavily and randomly mixed, and you're this close up to it, and remember we're forced to be close up to it because we've come in at this level, it's a bit busy. It's a rather hard to look at pattern when up close. Now you can do that kind of stuff of mixing blocks like that to give more texture when you're looking further away, and if we back away it starts to become less awkward to look at, but it is still very busy. But when you're really up close, you maybe want to pick blocks that are slightly closer together in tone. So the stone, andesite and gravel, they're all quite close, but these other blocks, the much darker and lighter blocks, stick out rather a lot and make the pattern a little bit hard to look at. So just be careful of the block choices that you're using, specifically when you're using things like World Edit, to try and bring extra texture. That for me is a little bit too much texture. So there's a little warning note, something to be careful of when you are terraining. And Once again we have something slightly different, and this time it is in the form of, should we say, a slightly more jokey tone to a plot. This is plot 61, Santa's New Facilities by Blueboat, who we have seen before doing slightly different stuff. Obviously this was a plot that was put up nearer to Christmas time. Obviously I'm behind, well, I think we're at over 100 builds on the server now, and I'm only just looking at build 61, so obviously these were thrown up around December time. But here we are, starting where Blueboat wants us to, and reading the sign says Santa was being outdone by Amazon delivery speed, so we decided to invest in some new facilities. So let's have a look at these new facilities. And there we are, massive, great big industrial complex for the new operations, and the fantastic super high techie tech sleigh to replace those poor reindeers. No need for them anymore because this baby flies by itself. This, I hope Blueboat takes this in the right way, but this feels to me like a bit of a one-trick plot. It really is a bit of a joke, a visual joke, that's all kind of set off by those signs at the beginning. There's just a little bit of fun, a little bit of seasonal fun, built with Blueboat's typical style, and lots of fun, but not too much to explore. So I think the most we can take from this is great sleigh, fantastic work, and yeah, very amusing. I felt like that it was quite appropriate for this plot to start from a good way back so that we could see the full effect of the build in its entirety. This is build 62, interestingly entitled Art Pure by Unnatural, and I think it gives us a slight clue into the thought process that maybe Unnatural uses to start a build, and it's slightly different than others. I'm guessing here, I'm trying to read minds slightly, so I hope I'm right and I can be corrected in the comments below by anyone who knows better, but it feels like this builder is someone who starts rather than with a structure or a style in mind, but with a sense of a picture in mind. This feels like this was imagined in its entirety as almost like a painting, rather than imagined structurally. And I hope you can see what I mean from looking at this. It feels like a picture. I don't know if you've ever seen some of those fantasy illustrations that float around the internet, but it feels like this was a painting that was made into a building almost. Maybe it actually was, who knows, but it's a really charming effect. Obviously that effect is only increased by the fact that none of these buildings have interiors. They are only meant to be viewed from outside. I've said this before, palette choice is wonderful, unique, different. There's no sign of stone here at all. This is all wood, and let's see what materials are being used here. Is that wood and clay, maybe? I hope I'm right there. But it gives a really solid palette. There's all reds, browns and greens. It's been very strict to keep to that palette, and it makes the plot that little bit more striking. The other thing about this plot that I think is worth taking a look at and maybe learning from is that here is a build that's being thought about vertically. Now, it's very tempting when you get a flat plot like these over here, where it's just a flat patch of grass, to think about putting ever so slight hills and undulations and maybe building 1 or 2 story houses. But this is someone who has envisaged things going from bottom to top, and all these different layers that are given from these buildings and on these very steep cliff edges adds a different feel to the build, and allows for lots more to go on all these different bridges and ropes at different layers, and all these different windows at different heights and nestled buildings, can only really be done when you start to think as much vertically on a plot as you do horizontally. So if you haven't tried it before, maybe give that a go in your next plot. Start to try and build things to be tall and at different heights. Now here we are at build 63, Temple of Dragons by Zetion, one of the two hopefully, and this is fantastic. Again, I've got to say this, we are 63 builds in on this server and still we are finding things that are unique and that we've not seen before. This, I think, is the first Chinese style dragon plot of the server, and it's a great one. It's a really solid build. You can see these fantastic massive Chinese dragons here. There's one curled at the top, and then this skinnier, smaller one here, breathing fire and crawling around this wonderful Japanese temple style building here. I think obviously one thing that this builder's either struggled with or not thought about is the lighting. It's very dark with all of that build above it. May have been worth thinking of ways to bring a little bit more light to those builds, but still that is not to detract from the skill that has been shown here. Now that we've had a little look at the dragons, I want to have a little look at some of the smaller details, because as you know, sometimes I'm a geek for the little things rather than the big things, and the first thing I would like to point out is these. The walkways, paths, roads, whatever you want to call them. Really easy to go on autopilot when you're putting things like that on a plot. Here is someone who has done the exact opposite and lavished a lot of love on them, tried to do something different and stylistically interesting, mixing the stone, wood steps and the red nether brick there to give a really stylized finish that goes all the way around the base of this building. And it's a little thing that can make an interesting difference and make your build style stand out. But I think you'll agree this building as a whole is a really good solid effort here. Good detailing on the outside of these builds here, enough to make it visually interesting without going over the top, and inside as well, really interesting style with these strange curved structures, maybe a hint of the magical going on here, the glass floors, all going all the way up through these tiered roofs. So yeah, fantastic different style that can be learned from, copied off. Give it a go if you've spent all of your days doing modern or doing medieval. Try and mix it up. Maybe try and do an Asian or Oriental or Japanese style build for your next build to challenge yourself and try something new. This is a great example of it. As I said with the last one, you can almost imagine this coming from an illustration. I would really recommend it if you're looking for ideas and struggling to know what to build. Have a little look on the internet for some fantasy illustration and art, because it really does give you some ideas for unique architectural styles, visual styles that will break you out of autopilot and out of your usual style and learn to do new and interesting things and really challenge yourself. So there you go, guys. Set yourself a challenge, try something new for your next build. Maybe a Japanese temple is going to be it. So I want to bring us back to that conversation of choosing your spawn point for this next build, because it furthers that point a little bit more, I think. This is build 64, entitled Harlequin Hall by Literally Dave. And Literally Dave has decided to start us in this pokey little cave. And it says, for the best experience, enable night vision, which we already have done, as you can see. Even though we're in a cave, it's very light. and the reasons for that will become apparent. He's really hammered that home for a horrible experience, disable night vision. Now, this is a fairly simple way of giving some instructions to people before they see the plot as a whole by putting you in one of these little caves. For me though, I would have liked this to have been integrated with the build itself, because as it is, it's just a hole in this great big monolithic stone face, completely detached from this, which is the actual build itself, which let's back away and have a look at from a distance, because it is gorgeous. And completely different again. Amazing. Now 64 builds in and still we are finding surprises. It's a heavily themed plot, as you can see, with the spades and hearts, this Joker Harlequin theme, which is really strong throughout. Let's have a little look inside though, because there is something that is so well done that it would be an absolute crime not to point out, and it is this illusion of the mirror. Look on the floor here. Look at this. Amazing. That for me is the best I have seen possibly anywhere of the illusion of a mirror, by effectively building the entire build upside down underneath this glass. And it just works superbly. It really does make you feel like you're walking on to a glass mirror surface, doesn't it? Really fantastically done. Lots of hard work, and explains why we were so high up on this stone plinth. But lots of details to look at here. These lovely jester builds give real character and style, uniqueness to this build. Really well done. Some attempt at making some frescoes on the walls. It can be a little bit dangerous to try this. They can sometimes look a little bit pixel art, but I think this builder has done well to avoid that. Stayed just on the side of staying in theme. And again, look at that color palette, being really strict with themselves. Picked the black, white, red and yellow throughout, and it really brings a coherence to this build. So I hope that brings you guys some inspiration of something different that you might want to try. And well done to literally Dave. This is a fantastic plot. Really enjoyed looking at it. But as I say, think about where you want people to spawn in, and maybe have that be part of the storytelling of the plot. So just something to think about. Now here we are at build 67, Cliffside Town by Delosis. And there's a couple of points that I want us to bring out of this plot as we have a look at the vista from the spawn platform, specially created so that we would again be forced to see this build from afar and from a specific viewpoint to start with, which is lovely. All those smokestacks going, but let's dive a little bit more into the detail on this plot. And first off, we have these lovely airships. Nice touch there. Feel fairly realistic, realistic for a wooden airship. I know that's ridiculous, isn't it? But sufficiently well built that they feel realistic, I suppose is what I mean. Really nice, unique style with these sails underneath, and again going for the glass effect here to make it feel murky and deep under here by using the lots of layers of and wow, that is a lot of layers, isn't it? Let's look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's at least 12, 14, maybe even 15 layers of glass in there that we can see down to the bottom of those cliffs submerging into the depths. It's a little detail, but it adds a sense of I don't know, atmosphere when done right. It's really well done. Let's have a little look at the structures up here. We have these strange wheel devices at the edge here, and some good solid small builds, lots of small builds to make the feeling of a village or town on a small plot. You have to build them quite small to get that effect, and they're nice and uniformly designed, so they feel like this place has a style of its own. There is one or two specific things that I want to bring out of this that are a little bit different and a little bit fun, and first thing is these chimneys, which give us a little sense of whimsy. They're not completely tied to realism. I know I go on a lot about making things look realistic to make your builds better, but this is an instance of deliberately choosing to make things a little less realistic, slightly more fantastical and whimsical, by having these strange stone curvy chimneys coming out of every building, and that when done deliberately gives as I say, that little sense of it being slightly fantastical, and slightly less attached to reality, but nevertheless grounded in a set style. Everything conforms. All these buildings have these similar funny forked chimneys. It's almost a little bit Dr. Seuss-esque there, isn't it? The other thing that I wanted to point out, which I think is a good thing to learn from this plot, is if you look from above, every rooftop is slightly different, which means that there is not a lot of just copy pasting happening. Although there's a lot of builds, it can be very tempting to design 3 or 4 different builds and then just copy paste them around the place and hope people don't notice. This is a builder who has gone out of their way to build every single build ever so slightly different. As you can see, each roof is unique, and that little bit extra attention to detail, effort on the builder's part, really does bring just a little touch extra life to the place. It really does make the plot and the build that little bit better. So guys, I really urge you, if you're not doing this yet, or if you're trying to throw plots up too quickly by doing a lot of copy pasting, try not to do that so much. Try and make every single build by hand. I know it takes longer, and see though if that makes your builds better. There's the challenge for you guys. Do everything by hand on your next plot and see if it improves your build style. Now we're getting close to the end of this episode. We've got this and one more build to see. This is again quite a small plot. This is Build 69, Witch Hut by Breakbone, and there's not a tremendous amount to see, but what there is to see is just lovely, and I think there are some things that we can again take away from it. This looks like the player has attempted to take something that is in the vanilla survival game, that's witch huts and swamps, and they have tried to upgrade this first of all this structure and upgrade this biome. I think it's a wonderful thing to have a go at, and something that we've seen previously with the likes of mesa biomes being recreated and improved, and I would love to see this biome stretched beyond a couple hundred blocks each way. To see something like this stretched out for as far as the PC can render would be a really fun thing to see, and I like that this player has challenged themselves to one-up Mojang. It's a good thing to try and do if you're trying to branch out, do something different, do something new. If you're running out of ideas, it's a good challenge. Pick something in the vanilla game and try and see if you can make it better. And this little witch hut is just charming, nice and dinky on the stilted legs, just like the real thing, detailed inside and out, very simply and tastefully, and I think that's a really good fun build, so well done Breakpox. Now here we are on our final build. This is build 70, Castle on a Hill by Prison. And this is clearly a build by someone who has spent less time on creative so far, and you can tell these are some of the hallmarks of a beginner builder here. But there are some good things and bad things to say. I will try and be gentle with the bad and lavish with the good, as I always do. Here we have, as the name implies, a castle on a hill, which there are lots of plots that are castles on hills. So it is nice to see that this builder has attempted to create a castle in a different way, trying to create a different style, a style of their own, with these interesting use of fences and fence gates on a larger scale to create a sense of structure, and then these very ornate turrets, really heavily detailed, that merge into this main tower. It's a real shame that we can't get inside. I would have loved for us to have a door that led us inside to an interior, but we've not been blessed with that. So a few things that I would like to kind of point out, and the first thing is it's a noble effort to try and do a familiar thing in an unfamiliar way. Definitely something for other builders to learn from. Try to do things not just on autopilot. And this is a good example of someone really attempting to do this. For me, there's too much detailing in this though. It's hard to look at. If you look at that build from a distance, your eyes struggle to focus on the structure and the shape of the build because there's too much detail everywhere. You can't tell which bit's a turret and which bit's a wall because it's all very over detailed. So paring back on the detail in certain places, leaving more detail on certain points and less detail on other points, might make builds easier to visually understand as you look around them. Obviously this plot has also been rushed to finish because that terrain isn't finished, is it? Really? It's a good start, but it needs smoothing out, it needs detailing. It's just grass and stone at the moment, and there's much more that you can do with terrain, as we've seen from many of our other plots that we've looked at so far in these videos. But as I say, on the whole, trying to not build on autopilot is the thing we can learn from this plot. And it's something that we should all be doing, no matter whether you're a beginner builder like this, or whether you're well on into your Minecraft building journey. Don't go on autopilot. Always try to bring something new and unique to a build, and you will see the benefit of that effort. So there we have it, folks, another episode done, lots more that we've seen and hopefully learned from. I hope you guys have gained some insights or found some useful suggestions off this video. But for now, guys, that's been me, Major Graft. Until next time, happy building.